All right, all right. Welcome to Elevate Mentorship Week 7. We are here Wednesday night, just like usual. My name is Joey Wilson. I'm a Chairman 100 with I Am Mastery Academy. I am your host. Every single week, we bring you these calls to bring top earners of the company, bring people that are making things happen to this call and give you the value to take your business and your life to the next level. And a few housekeeping things first, guys. There may or may not be income talked about on this call. So there's no guarantees regarding income. Your success or failure depends on your own skill set and personal effort. Basically saying if you don't do anything, you're not going to make any money. I was cool with that because I knew I was going to do something, right? Step number 2 is make sure your team is on this call. Do not let them miss this call, guys. It's going to help them take their business to the next level, plain and simple. I don't miss calls. You know, there's a lot of top earners on this call right now plugging in themselves. And then number 3 is take notes. Take notes, right? Money makers are note takers, and we all know the reality. If you're not taking notes, you're going to forget 90% of the information. And if you have a brand new notebook, we have 19 weeks left until Elevate Orlando, right? You can fill up your notebook with a bunch of speakers that are going to be getting on these calls, and you can have just a ton of information that can help you go next level. And then you can get up on that stage as a brand new chairman in the company and say, you know what? Those Elevate calls really helped me do it. So I appreciate everybody hopping on here. Type in the chat where you guys are calling in from. Me and my daughter Layton are calling in from Southern California. We got Eau Claire, Wisconsin on the call. We got Georgia on the call. Little Rock, Arkansas. Let's go. Let's go. Richmond, Virginia. We got Austin, Texas, Minnesota, Frisco, Southern California. Let's go. Let's go. Australia, Denver, Colorado, Minneapolis, Chicago. Let's get it, guys. Well, I appreciate you. And here's the crazy thing about tonight's call, guys. When I got in this industry over 10 years ago. My very first training that I ever did was 8 years ago. The funny thing about that training, it was on freeconferencecalling.com. So you'd call in to freeconferencecalling.com and then you type in your PIN code for the call, and you'd hop on and you'd listen to the host and the speaker of the call or the top earner of the company. And my very first one was 8 years ago. What's funny about that is I remember I was driving in the rain. I had to pull over. I called in. I was so nervous. You have no idea. I mean, I was freaking out. And I call in and I'm the host, so I have a special number. And the person that hosted me, or the person that introed me on that call was the person that's speaking tonight, and I'm going to be introing her on this call. And she is an absolute boss with what it is that we do. And that's just a real thing, guys. I've known her for years. In my previous company, she was paid to fly around the world and teach people and train people on how to go next level, right? She's been in this industry for 15 plus years. She's a chairman in I Am Mastery Academy. I have nothing but pure respect for her, and that's why we wanted her on this call, because she has so much wisdom, value, and knowledge that she can deliver. But not only that, she's a mother, she's a grandmother to 5, she's a mother to 5, and I've actually learned a lot just from her kids as well. So I'm excited to have her on this call, and so I'm gonna pass it over to you. The floor is yours. Type fire in the chat for Sakinah, Abdul-Jaleel. Let's make this thing happen.
Wow. You really took me back down memory lane. I'm like, what? Oh my God, I remember those conference calls. That was so much fun to just travel with you there, because it's amazing what's happened in this short amount of time. So first, before I say anything else, I have to throw this back to Chairman Joey Wilson. Listen, you guys, and I know a lot of you on here, you get to work closely with him. I hope you get to work closely with him. I hope you're taking full advantage of having access to this caliber of a leader. Like, no joke, no hype, no fluff. When this guy was in the last company, like, he was tearing it up. He made no excuses. None. And he came right over here and he's doing the exact same thing. Just think about this for a second. He put this call together. Yes, there's different leaders on here, but he put this call together, not for himself. He's there with his brand new baby. He's doing this for us. He's doing this for you. So when you can literally attach yourself, be in the proximity of leadership like that, you need to take full advantage of it. So throw it back, give it back in the chat to none other than Joey Wilson. I really, really appreciate everything that you bring to the table, not only what you brought there, but what you're bringing here. So guys, I am super, super excited to be on this call. Literally, like, I got my glass of water, you know, and I'm like, okay, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to talk about? And I'm going to share with you guys a part of my story that I probably haven't really dived into. I've tackled it a little bit here and there, but it's really what helped me start prospering. Because like many of you, I mean, obviously you're in this company, you're in network marketing, you know, you're on the charts, you're doing your thing. This may or may not be your first company. You're probably doing everything that you need to do, quote unquote. You know, you're making your list, you're making your phone calls and things of that nature, you know, but there was some things that I needed to do that had nothing to do with the business in order to unlock some things that was stopping me from having success. So I had to take it all the way back. So what I'm going to do is, I was actually working on a slideshow way before Joey called me. So I just decided to kind of put some things into that. And then I've got my notes here, because anybody that knows me, y'all know I can talk. So I'm going to try to do this for myself. I may not even say what's on the slideshows, to tell you the truth. I'm just using it as a point of reference. Okay. So I don't have y'all on here all night, because I'm doing a call for Egypt at 3:45 in the morning. So yeah, today is talking time, needless to say, for a team over there, for a group of people over there. So let me, what is this? Let's unlock that power. Let's go. Okay, let me do this. I'm going to pull up a slideshow here, and just give me a second to make this thing do what it needs to do. Okay, this is something that I had to learn. And so I've literally titled this Forgive Your Way to Prosperity. And it's really something that I wish I would have known. You know, let me take that back. Because everything comes to me in the proper space, time, and sequence. And it wasn't meant for me to know it back then, because if it was, I wouldn't be here today to share with you what it is that I'm going to share with you. So why am I talking about forgive your way to prosperity? Because I was that person when I started in network marketing. You heard Joey say, you know, I've been in this industry for 15 plus years. And I started way back in the 90s when I was selling long distance and pagers. Now, some of y'all are too young to even imagine. You can't even wrap your brain around paying for long distance, but your parents can. Okay, you don't even know anything about a pager. All right, but I was that chick trying to get you to spend 5 cents a minute to make a call to the city across town. Marcos Rivera, quit laughing at me. Okay, now with all that being said, I had done several businesses before, okay, and I was married during that time, but nothing really clicked for me. I dabbled here and there, but when I found network marketing, I fell in love with it. So I literally did everything that they told me to do. How many times do you hear people say that? You know, if this is their second or third company, I did everything that they told me to do, and I still couldn't make any money. Maybe that's you. Maybe you're thinking that right now. I'm doing what they tell me to do. I'm getting on calls. I'm making phone calls. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and it's still not clicking for you. And so I was having some success in that company, but at the same time, I wasn't having success in that company, okay? Because there were things that I really needed to understand and I needed to work through. So with that, I'm gonna go right on through this slideshow. I'm gonna give you a little bit of background on my story. So this is about me, okay? And literally it's what you see on here. And it's things have almost happened like this in chronological order. It's kind of weird how, as I was putting it together, I was like, man, that almost happened in the order that everything happened. So this is my background: emotionally abused, sexually abused, physically abused. And I'm an entrepreneur, divorced after 25 years of marriage, network marketer, interior designer, certified trainer, speaker, investor, trader, money mindset coach. I am 59 years old. So I have done a thing or two, to say the least. You don't get to 5 kids and 5 grandkids without being in the 50s unless you was doing something way too young, right? So I want you to understand that I had to learn that everything that happens to me is to promote me, but I did not understand that when I was younger. I did not understand that I needed to forgive in order to move forward. I did not understand it. See, I was programmed to make everything, I was programmed to keep up appearances. I was programmed to make everything look better than it was. Some of you may have experienced that if you're in, you know, maybe you or somebody on your team You know, when you're in an event and they ask you, you know, raise your hand if you're going chairman, throw your hand up in the air. And you might be that person that's throwing your hand up in the air, but in the back of your mind, you don't even believe that that's possible. You know, if you're working on something else and you're trying to get to some success and you say you want it, you see it, but you cannot figure out what is the problem. See, in that first company, like I said before, I was doing everything. That was my first time being exposed to personal growth and development. It was my first time getting in front of speakers live like Les Brown and John C. Maxwell and these incredible speakers, Dr. Dennis Kimbrough. I had never had that much poured into me. I was taking notes all the time, you know, making the calls, doing the things, building the team. And like I said before, I reached a level of success. But then when I ran up against a brick wall, I quit. After years, not just, you know, first year, second year, third year, it was probably about my 6th year. And I quit because I ran up against a roadblock. See, I was also having problems in my marriage. So what did I do? Okay. Had problems in my marriage. I threw myself into that company because I didn't want to deal with what was happening in my marriage. So I threw myself over there. Then when there were roadblocks there, I got away from that, threw myself back over here. So it was all this tossing back and forth because, again, I had been programmed to keep up appearances. This is what happens if you've been emotionally abused, sexually abused. I was programmed to make things look a certain way when they really weren't a certain way. And I was too young to even understand what was really happening, but it followed me throughout my life. It followed me in my personal life. It followed me in my business life. So I was real good at making things look a certain way, but that's not the way they really were. And I could not really honestly figure out what was the problem. I wanted to point to outside things. It's this, it's that. These people, they don't want anything. How many times have you heard yourself say that? Oh man, I talk to these people, they don't want anything. Or you heard people say that on your team, oh, you know, over here in this town, over here in this city, no, they don't want anything. They don't want to do anything. Man, it's the charts, man, it's the market. It's this, it's that, it's my spouse, it's my girl, it's my guy, it's my, oh, these kids, it's this, it's everybody else. But it wasn't me. It was everybody else. And when I moved away from home, like home, because I felt like I had no control over my life. I had no control over my body, had no control over anything while I was at home. So when I got out there going to college, oh, I'm gonna control everything. So I was wilding out because I felt like I was in control. Well, really, I was out of control, but you don't understand it at the time, right? But I was running. Chancey, I was trying to control everything. Oh, and every time I hit a roadblock, I'm gone. See, because now I'm not a kid at home where I have to deal with a situation and I got to keep up appearances. So I'm a grown woman at 18, right? So a roadblock, boom, I'm gone. A roadblock here, boom, I'm gone. Running. But all of that started catching up to me. And what did I do? I started running again. When I was in that first network marketing company, if anybody knows about the personality traits, put a 7 in the chat if you've ever heard of the red, green, yellow, blue. I'll give you a guess as to what color I am. Now, in that first company, there's something called a dysfunctional red. That was me. Very dysfunctional. Very dysfunctional, Marcos. I keep messing with you because I can see you. Very dysfunctional. I wanted to control everything because on the inside, everything else was out of control. And so I'm telling you guys this is simply because it kept following me everywhere I went. The problems, the situations, the denial, the feeling like I had to control everything, because I completely felt out of control and I didn't know why. Because when a person is trying to keep up appearances and trying to keep it all together and trying to participate with the crowd, and you're really not in it, you're not fooling anybody, but you feel like you are because you feel like crap on the inside. You can't figure out why your business isn't growing. You can't figure out why, your home life isn't the way that you want. You can't figure this out. But everything was inside of me. The whole time it was inside of me. Now I'm gonna take you back down memory lane. This is a picture of me when I was going through the divorce. This was probably about 10, well, probably about 11 years ago. My daughter happened to capture this picture. And we had gone on a kind of like a little mini staycation. And this was maybe about 8 months in to that. Okay. And she just happened to capture this picture, and I kept it because I remember where I was sitting. I remember everything about this picture, and I was trying to get a clear vision of what was going to happen, where I was going to go, not meaning physically where I was going to go. Okay. Not that, but where I was going to go mentally. And I knew that because this divorce was extremely difficult for me. You can imagine 25 years, okay, a marriage ending. And the way that it happened, I'll spare you the details, but the way that it happened, the physical act of him leaving happened fast, but it really happened 25 years ago prior, if you follow what I'm saying, right? And so for me, this was the very first time when I had to get real and I had to get clear. I had to get real and I had to get clear. It wasn't easy. That's why I put the disclaimer up there, because I knew that this was going to eat away at me. I saw what it was. I saw what it was doing to me. I saw what it was doing to my children. And I knew that I had to get a real clear vision about what I wanted for myself. And I knew it had to start with forgiveness. I knew it had to start with forgiveness, no matter what anybody told me. And, you know, here's the thing. When you go through a divorce and when there's certain situations happen, you have all these people that come up in your ear and they're telling you, well, girl, I knew this, I knew that, and this, and I had to stop all that. I had to get these people out of my ear, right? Because I didn't want to go down that road with them. I didn't want to build up this resentment. I didn't want to build up this hate. Have you ever known anybody to gone through something traumatic as a breakup or a divorce or something like that, and they're still bitter years later? They can't even be in the same room with that person. They hear that person's voice. They hear their name. They don't let it go. I knew I could not be that person. So when she caught this picture of me, I was literally thinking, how was I going to get myself out of this situation mentally? How was I going to forgive him? How was I going to forgive him? That's the thought. And so literally the answer for me just became what it said on here. My mission was learn how to let it go one day at a time. See, I'm that type of person. I'm a all in or nothing type of person. That's part of my conditioning, right? So I didn't want to take anything a step at a time. This is why I struggled so much in business, right? Because I didn't want to take things one step at a time. I didn't want to have the patience. I didn't want to have the discipline. I wanted it to happen right now. Because as a kid, when I was dealing with the abuse that I was dealing with, and I had to switch like that, I had to turn it off and turn it on just like that. So I got used to doing things like this. My mom was that person that things had to be done right now. There was no, oh, you did not sit back and take your time. Oh, no, you didn't. So everything was like this. So that's how I conditioned myself. Oh, we need change right now. I got to do it right now. But at this moment, I knew that this was not something I could make happen like that, because I did not want the marriage to end. I did not want it to end. It ended up being the absolute best thing for me. But at the time, you couldn't tell me that. So I knew that the process had to begin with me forgiving him. But what I absolutely found out was I did not only need to forgive him, I needed to go back and forgive anything and everybody that had ever caused any issues for me. That was how I got to this space here. See, prior to all of that, without going through that forgiveness, without letting go, and without, you know, they say, let go and let God, and putting in the action steps that I needed, I would have never had the courage to step on this stage. I would have never had the courage to be a speaker for that last company. I would have never had the courage. Never. I would have never had the courage to go back into network marketing some years later. I would have never done that. And that opened up a whole new world for me. It opened up a part of my personality that I didn't even know existed. It gave me permission, because I gave myself permission. And this is the power of forgiveness. Because when you forgive others, you've given yourself permission to release everything that that person or those people or that situation has ever done to you. You have to release it. You know, one of the things that I figured out, you guys, is this. And I don't know what you believe. You may, all of you may have completely different beliefs, and that's fine. Most people believe that there is a higher power, no matter what you call him. I had a real, what is it? I don't know, slap in the face or whatever you want to call it. And I was thinking about, man, isn't this crazy? I pray to God every day. And every day I ask him to forgive me. But yet I'm having a hard time forgiving his creation. That was crazy to me. Every day. Please forgive me, please forgive me, please forgive me. I ain't forgiving him, no. I ain't forgiving her. What? And that started making it easier for me. It really started making things easier for me because forgiveness is powerful. See, this picture here that you see, this was also during that time. And my son had taken me out to dinner, and there was this candle in front of me, and I needed to just say a silent prayer to myself. I was trying to get through it, right? And so I love looking at these pictures now. One, they motivate me to get back down to that size, because I'm telling you, ain't nothing like a diet divorce. Okay, I digress. I'm not advocating for it. Okay, but it is what it is. But this picture is really important to me because it's documenting, just like that last picture, it's documenting my process. I get to go back and look at that and see how I documented my process without even realizing it. See, when you think of a person, what it says over here, you have to release the resentment. When you think of a person, a place, or a thing, whenever you think of something and it causes any kind of feeling, that's where you need to start with your forgiveness, right then and there. Right there, because it will sit in the back of your mind. It will sit in the depths of your soul, and it will eat away with you, and it will affect your business. It will 100% affect your business. It will affect everything around you. You ever heard of the situation where, sometimes it's a joke where people are saying, when there's a husband and wife, and, the wife is always nagging, the wife is mad because the husband left the toilet seat up, right? Again. Well, it's not the toilet seat. And 9 times out of 10, what she's mad about has nothing to do with him. It's something that she has not let go of. And it might have something to do with him, or it might have something to do with her own father. Because a lot of times the most difficult things that we don't do, or we do, is that we hold on to things, not ever examining, why do I think the way that I think? Why do I feel the way that I feel? Why, when I run into a brick wall, do I want to run? Why am I trying to control every situation? Where does that come from? Where does that come from? And that's where I literally began to understand that I didn't like feeling out of control. I mean, who does, really? I had to ask myself, why was I hurting so bad? Why was it so devastating? Not just the going through the divorce, but why were things so devastating to me? Why was it so difficult? Why was I not able to move forward in my business? Why was I not able to get that business off the ground? Why was I not able to do this? Why was I not able to do that? Why was I not? It was constantly running into brick walls. So one of the things that I did, and I'm gonna challenge you to do the same thing, write down literally everything and everyone that has ever hurt you, as far back as you can remember. Write it down. It might be your mom, your dad, your brother, a neighbor, a teacher, a bully at school, you're a coworker, a former boss, a current boss, the person you with, it doesn't matter. Write it all down. Write it down. And something happens when you see it in black and white. You get to see it for what it really is. Because as long as we keep it in our mind and hold it in our bodies, we really can make it be more than what it is. See, I had to learn to forgive the people that abused me when I was a kid. That was hard. But it was just eating away at me. They were still living their lives, but it was eating away at me. It was literally holding me back. because I did not want to face it. I did not want to think about it. I just didn't even want to think about it, as you can imagine. But when you forgive that person, because I used to think that when you forgive somebody that you were saying it was okay. And I had to learn that forgiveness is not condoning it. It's actually shifting your perspective, because what I began to understand when I started learning how to forgive those people, I also realized actually it made me feel sorry for them, because I knew somebody had abused them too. I knew so, and I never thought about that before. Like somebody abused them too. And it made me feel sorry for them. It made me look at things in a different perspective. And then I also had to forgive myself, because I blamed myself. See, a lot of times when you don't want to, if you don't want to dig into that forgiveness of someone, it's because 9 times out of 10, underlying it, you don't want to forgive yourself, because you feel some sort of shame, some sort of guilt, some sort of remorse. But when you start forgiving other people, the most difficult person that you will forgive will be yourself, because of the shame, because of the guilt. And you may have, I was a little kid, I had no control over that. But for years, I blamed myself. I blame myself for a lot of different things. If people quit my business, I blame myself. If people, if this company, this business that I was working, if it didn't, succeed, I blame myself. If this, if that, whenever there were problems in the marriage, I blame myself. I blame myself on the inside, but on the outside, oh, I was good at keeping up appearances. It's crazy. I should have had therapy a long time ago, y'all. I had to work this thing out myself, right? And I'm grateful for the process. I'm very grateful for the process, but I'm telling you that if you're holding back, like it says on here, if you're holding back any forgiveness, forgive your upline, forgive your sideline, forgive your downline, forgive your CEO, forgive. It is the medicine. It's the vitamin. It's everything that you need, because now you can release that. It doesn't take me long to forgive anybody anymore. It doesn't even cross my mind to not forgive them. It doesn't even cross my mind, because I know that if I don't forgive them, it's only going to hold me back. If you guys have ever forgiven somebody and then felt complete release and feeling relieved, put a 1 in the chat, because it's a power that nobody else can give you, nobody else can take away from you. And it took me a long time to learn this. So I'm really talking to y'all today like y'all are my grandkids, because I know I'm the oldest one on here. So all y'all my grandkids tonight, okay? Because this is what I would tell my grandkids, which now they're so young, they're babies pretty much. But like it says on here, forgiving yourself is really going to be the most difficult thing that you'll do. But you constantly have to forgive yourself. Okay, because like it says on here, it's really the key to unblocking your abundance. As long as you're holding somebody to an accountability, as long as you're holding somebody to something, you're actually blocking what can happen for you. And here's the thing, the craziest thing is sometimes you can still have success, but it won't last long. It won't last long. You'll find a reason to mess it up. And it's because you're holding on to something that isn't yours to hang on to. I think I even put it on here. Let me see. Yeah. Withholding forgiveness is like drinking a cup of poison, expecting the other person to die. I actually read that someplace, but it's so true. Can you imagine? You're drinking a cup of poison and you're like, I'm gonna show you, and you drinking a poison and you waiting for that person to die. That's how I used to live my life. I'm not forgiving. I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. Sometimes people will say, revenge is or success is the best revenge, something like that. And there's a little element of truth to it, but it's not gonna be successful if you're withholding that forgiveness, because people mess up. Sometimes people do things that there's what's the term? There's a form of forgiveness called exoneration. And that's where you're wiping the slate clean, because sometimes people just make honest mistakes. And when you wipe the slate clean for them, that means that you're salvaging the relationship. right? You're wiping the slate clean. Sometimes you won't be able to wipe the slate clean in the sense of continuing to build a relationship with that person. And it's okay. Sometimes you won't even be able to speak directly to that person and ask them for forgiveness or tell them that you forgive them. And that's okay. As long as you do the process, as long as you do it, you can write a letter, you can write it down on paper. You may never have to see that person or speak to that person, but you got to let it go in here. The people that abused me when I was a kid, I haven't seen them in years, but I've let it go. I had to. And see, learning to forgive, this is my family, y'all. Learning to forgive, and let me be a better example to those that I love most. Can you imagine? Think about this for a second. And I hope you all are not in this situation, but can you imagine holding on to something so strong that it would affect the people that you love the most? Because listen, what's the phrase? Things are not taught, they're caught. How can I teach them to forgive? They had to watch me at my lowest point. Some of this, my daughter-in-law, and there's some grandkids in there too, but they had to see me at my lowest point. My own kids did. At my lowest point while I was going through that divorce. My lowest point. Not sleeping, crying all the time, every single day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, crying. And it was something that one of my sons, this one right here, if you can see my cursor, he's got the white shirt on. He came over to the house and I was crying in there on the floor. And he started calling the rest of his brothers and his sister. And I heard him saying while I was crying that he didn't know what to do. He was like, she won't stop crying. Everybody has to come over here right now. She will not stop crying. I don't know what to do. And he sounded so broken. And I heard him and I kept crying and I kept hearing him say that. And in maybe 15 or 20 minutes, everybody was over here. And so this one here, where my cursor is, this is my youngest one. He picked me up off the floor and he laid me across his lap. He, took me to the sectional, laid me across his lap. And the next thing I knew, like I hadn't slept in days. But when I woke up, I don't even know how long I was asleep. Like everybody was gone from the house. It was the best sleep ever. And the first thing that I heard when I woke up was, I don't know what to do. I heard my son's voice saying that. And it was right there that I was like, oh, wait a minute. Wait. What am I showing them? Because they're going to go through things in life that I probably won't even be alive to witness. And what kind of example am I showing them that when tough things happen, you just give up? And I became so concerned about what am I showing them? So they literally watched me put one foot in front of the other. They watched me dry them tears. They watched me cry, just have bursts of, but I was sleeping, had bursts of tears, all of that, right? And they watched me put one foot in front of the other. This one here in the white shirt came to me with the company that Joey and I were in together. If I hadn't gone through that release and that forgiveness process, I would have never said yes to him and do that business. Never. This one right here opened up a whole new world for my family. We literally traveled around the world because I said yes to me. I said yes to forgiving any and everybody that ever hurt me. And I still do it now because, life happens and you still go through trials and tribulations. And I still do the same thing. I had to make a list about within the past 30 days, I had to write down a list. Okay. So it doesn't mean everything is perfect, but everything opens up. The prosperity comes when you release those things. See, in that first network marketing company, like I told you before, I was doing everything they told me to do. I was going to all the trainings. I was taking all the notes. You heard Joey, note takers are money makers. I was doing all of that, making the phone calls, doing the presentations, all of that. But because I had all these mental blocks in front of me. I could not break through it. I was stopping. You heard the phrase blocking your blessings. I want you to ask yourself tonight, not on this webinar, but what are you doing to stop your success? So you can get all the how-tos, you can get the this, you can get the punch list of do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. But if you don't get through here, right, it's never going to affect here, and it's never going to be in you, because you'll constantly be looking for someone else to make it happen for you, or this one, this one training or this one phone call. And the other thing that will happen is every time you run into a roadblock, which is what I was doing, I would run. I would quit. I would make an excuse because I didn't want to deal with me. If that's making sense to you, put some sevens in the chat so I know it's making sense to you. I really want you to understand what's on my heart to speak to you all about when it comes to forgiveness. Because like I said before, I just think it's absolutely crucial to everything. And this is what it says. One of the biggest lessons that I learned was that when I forgave others and forgave myself, the mistakes and shortcomings in myself and others were so much easier to accept. This allowed me to let people on my team be people on my team. Did I still get my feelings hurt? Yep. Did people do some janky things? Yep. Were there some moments when I was like, oh man, this what? And I had to catch myself up, forgive them, let it go. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned is literally to look at what you can control and look at what you can't control. And what you can't control, take the action to control it. Take the action to handle it. But what you can't control, that's what God gets. That's what God gets. You know how much relief that is when you know, okay, like literally take a piece of paper and write down whatever situation that you're going through. I don't care how small it is or how big it is or in between. Write it down on paper. What can I control about this situation? And what can I not control about this situation? See, you can control how many people you call. You can control setting your goal for walking that stage in Orlando. You can control the time that you put into, getting on the charts. You can control the time that you put into making the phone calls. You can control the time that you put in the presentations, but you can't control the outcome. You can't control who's going to sign up and who isn't. You can't control that. And it's such a relief when you realize that you can't control the outcome of these things, but you can control the actions. And once you understand that you really can control the actions, and because you're in a place of forgiveness, and because you're in a place of not holding yourself up to these impossible standards, and because you're in a place of not comparing yourself to anybody, you begin to understand that it's just you versus you. That's it. It's just you versus you. You versus the actions that you take. You're not worried about the outcome. You're not worried about who stays or who goes. You're not worried about any of that. You're not worried about this change, that change, because the only thing, the only person that you have to prove anything to is yourself, not any other person. But again, if you don't do the work to forgive and release and forgive yourself and constantly do this as different situations come along, then you'll always find yourself getting stuck. We know in business, it goes up and down, right? It goes up. It's like the market goes up, it goes down, and it goes sideways sometimes, right? And it's all good. It's all good because you know the actions that you need to take. You know what the outcome of it has nothing to do with you. You know how to forgive. You know how to release. You know how to let it go. You know how to move forward. You know how to have positive people in your life. You know how to, people that that don't serve you well and that you don't serve well, you know how to let them go and still come from a place of peace and still come from a place of love. Does that make sense? Because if you don't come from that place, you'll always be all over the place. Literally, you'll always be all over the place. So I really want to see everybody win. And I'm going to tell you this, and sometimes you've heard this, maybe you've said it yourself. You'll come across people where you want it more for them than what they want for themselves. And I want you to come from a place of mercy with dealing with those people. And I wasn't always that person. I told you I was a dysfunctional red until yesterday. I'm just joking about that. Okay. But I want you to understand that everybody's going through something. I want you to be that person that allows people to be who they are in the moment that they're being in. I want you to understand that just because that person isn't moving like you want them to move, they may be going through something, and you can talk to them about that forgiveness. You can talk to them about who do you need to forgive? Who do you need to release and let go? Maybe it's the mom, maybe it's the dad, it doesn't matter. But always keep yourself around an environment where people are positive. You already know that, but I mean genuinely positive. And the only way you can really do that is because you attract who you are, right? So if you're that person that's forgiving and letting things go, you'll recognize when fake people come into your circle. You'll recognize when you're around the wrong people. You'll recognize that negativity. You'll recognize that this is not the space that I need to be in. You'll recognize that. And you won't do it with anger. You won't come from a bad place, because you'll be able to bless and release them with love. Does that make sense? So, like I said, I just kind of wanted to talk about that part of my story that I hadn't really talked about, because a lot of times, we talk about, well, I hit this rank in X amount of days, or I hit that rank, or I did this, I did that, I went here, I did this, but it's like the mental game is what really takes you to those levels. And every time you find yourself falling back, or every time you find yourself, because here's the thing, I think it was Les Brown that said it, 99% of the time, we're not responsible for what happens to us. Stuff just happens, but we are responsible for how we respond. And you want to respond in a place that's genuine. And this is why I'm harping on forgiveness, okay? Because again, like I said before, forgiveness just unblocks everything. It unblocks everything. You operate in a whole different place, in a whole different space. So I really appreciate you guys. If you have any questions, I'm open to answering questions, that's no problem. But that's really what I wanted to cover tonight. And I really, really appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity. I appreciate you, Joey, for inviting me to this call. I appreciate you guys listening. It's just my journey. It's just my story, and it's still unfolding. I'm so grateful to be in this space. I'm so absolutely grateful to be here in this day and time. I'm really, really grateful for everything that I've gone through. I'm looking forward to going through some more, Lord willing, but I'm very grateful for the good, the bad, the tough, all of it. I'm really, really grateful for it. So again, I appreciate you guys. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. If not, we can close out the call. It's up to you. Read the chat. I'm telling you, put something in the chat, but then I don't read the chat. Sorry. You're welcome. You can say that you're grateful for even the trials and tribulations. Absolutely. Absolutely. The trials and tribulations are like that donkey that was thrown in the well. Y'all know that story of the donkey that was thrown in the well? If you know that story, put a 1 in the chat. I don't know the story of the donkey in the well. Okay, it was a very famous. Okay, I know Randy knows it. So the donkey in the well, there was a farmer who he had this old donkey, and it just wasn't performing anymore. It was broke down in his eyes. It was broke down, and he had to get rid of this thing, right? And he knew his neighbors were not going to be happy about him getting rid of an animal, because sometimes people take a stray dog and they go out to the country and let it go, or cats and things like this. Well, he was trying to find a place to get rid of this donkey, right? He was dragging this thing along, and the donkey knew that there was a problem because he was taking him away from the farm. So he's dragging him along, and he's got a shovel in one hand, and he's got this donkey with this rope around him, and he's pulling him, right? And so the donkey's nervous, but he has no choice but to go. So a long, long way from where the farm is, the farmer finds a well, an old abandoned well. He looks down in there, there's no water. It's just an old dried up well. He's like, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna throw this donkey down this well, right? This way he can't get out. He can't find his way back to the farm. My, neighbors will never know what happened. So he, it struggles, but he picks up this donkey and he pushes him down in the well. And you can imagine the noise that this donkey is making, right? He is just, I'll spare y'all because I usually do a donkey sound, but I won't do that on here because it's being recorded, right? But he does. You can imagine what a donkey sounds like, right? He's making all this noise all the way down in the well. Boom, he hits the bottom of the well. He starts really hollering, and the farmer looks down in there and he's like, oh man, this thing is making all this noise. So the farmer gets nervous because he doesn't want anybody to hear him, even though he's far away. So because he has the shovel, because his plan was really just to bury this thing in the ground, right? So he starts shoveling up some dirt because he's like, okay, I'm gonna have to bury this thing in this well. So he's shoveling dirt, shoveling it up, throwing it on the donkey, shoveling it up, throwing it on the donkey. Well, the dirt is hitting the donkey's back, right? And what does the donkey do? He shakes it off, right? What he doesn't know is that every time this farmer is throwing his dirt on his donkey, the donkey shakes it off. That's what you got to do with your problems, what you think are problems, right? Your issues, you got to shake them off. You got to be like that donkey, because eventually what happened was, as the farmer was throwing so much dirt on his donkey, it was raising the donkey up, because as he was shaking the dirt off, the dirt was falling underneath his feet. So eventually that donkey was able to step out of that well using the dirt that the farmer had thrown on him. So the dirt that gets thrown on you, you got to shake it off and use it as a stepping stone and not let it bury you. And you still got to forgive the farmer. That's the donkey story. Let me check this chat real quick because I don't want to ignore anybody's questions. Let's see. Oops. So now y'all know the donkey story. Yes, the signs of Jonah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate the love. Yes, forgiveness is a part of freedom. You said you're so deep. You literally saw a car this past weekend that brought back a memory from when I was a teenager. I forgave the person when I was in my 20s, but seeing that car made all the memories return. Yes, yes. Sometimes when you go through some things that are traumatic, there's going to be things that can trigger you. And the fact that you can identify that that's a trigger, you can leave it right where it is. You can let it stay there so that it doesn't affect other parts of your day and other parts of your life. There's still things that have come up that will trigger me. When, raising 5 kids and going through the type of abuse that I went through, there were things that triggered me. I remember one time my daughter was 2. She's the only girl, and the baby, I think she was 2 years old. And one of her older, he was a cousin, but he was more like an uncle. He's a grown man, right? And so he had picked her up and he said to her, yeah, you're almost old enough to come ride with me in my truck. When you get about 3 years old. And that's as far as his conversation went, because I went off because I was triggered. Immediately I was triggered. Snatched my daughter, went upside of him, went down the other side. And, looking back at it, it was like, whew, I really went there with him because he had no idea what was going on in my head. I don't know what his plans were. I think it was probably an innocent, I'm assuming it was just an innocent conversation, but it triggered me. And I didn't have the skills to understand how to handle that situation without being triggered. And so that's something that you have to really, really be mindful of, is that once you forgive, you got to be mindful of those little things that will trigger you. Because just like how I said, the wife is arguing about the husband keeping the toilet seat up, right? It has nothing to do with the toilet seat. So you can actually let it affect this part of your life because you haven't handled this trigger over here. Does that make sense? So you always want to handle those triggers, and you always want to see them for what they really are. And this is, again, another reason why it's so important to forgive. It's so important to forgive. Transparency and vulnerability is such a gift. Oh, you're so welcome. You're so welcome. What is the biggest piece of wisdom you can provide in getting through and to a breakthrough? That's a great question. The biggest piece of wisdom you can provide in getting through and to a breakthrough: giving yourself grace. Giving yourself grace, being compassionate. Because for me, it was hard for me to be compassionate to myself. I could show compassion to other people, right? but to be compassionate to me. Like people talk about self-care now. And a lot of times when they talk about self-care, they're talking about things, go get a mani-pedi, light a candle, all that kind of stuff, right? And that's important. But I think the best self-care you can do for yourself is to give yourself grace and be compassionate with yourself and understand that it's a process. That's why I was saying it's just you versus you. And we're in this world of social media. We're in this world of network marketing. We're in this world of walking the stage. We're in this world of high-fiving for ranks. And we're in this world of showing trading accounts. And ooh, look what I did. Look what I did. We're in this world, right? And it's okay, but don't use it to compare yourself. Let it inspire you. Look for people that inspire you on social media, not influence you. I know that term is, oh, I'm an influencer. I hate that term, right? Look for people that inspire you in the company, not make you feel like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to be able to do that? I know in the last company, we used to talk about that, like, look at that one. If he can do it, I can do it, that kind of thing, right? So you want to be inspired. And the only way you can be inspired instead of feeling like you're comparing yourself to somebody is you got to have that grace for yourself. Because every time, don't think that it was like an impulse getting from this forgiveness level and it was just a straight impulse. Oh, heck no. My ex-husband and I are in a great place. We are great friends. I can tolerate him for about a couple of hours. And after that, I'm like, yo, dude, like, you got to go, right? It's like, you're going to say something that's going to trigger me and I may not be that personally developed today, right? So it's a process and you got to give yourself that grace because stuff is going to happen and you have to be okay. Like, dang, I can't believe I went there again. And it's okay. You got to forgive yourself for money mistakes that you made. Oh my God, how many times did I have to forgive myself for making stupid money mistakes? Getting out of debt, getting back in debt, and feeling bad about it, feeling ashamed about it. Right? That's where that forgiveness comes in. That's where that compassion comes in. That's where that grace comes in, because it's all learning. It's like that dirt being thrown on that donkey's back. Oh, some more dirt. Now, you might have been the one that threw the dirt on your own back, but that's okay. That's okay. Shake it off. Allow yourself to make those mistakes because they're lessons, just like in the market. They're lessons. They're learning lessons. You want to learn from them. And if you don't give yourself grace and compassion, you won't ever be able to learn. You'll just be bitter. You'll build up resentment. You'll feel so ashamed and so guilty that you'll literally bury yourself with it. And there goes your business. There goes your personal relationships. There goes everything, all because you did not give yourself grace and compassion and the capacity to forgive. It's amazing that we as human beings, we have so much, we're the best of everything that God created. We're the absolute best, right? The best of all of his creation. And one of the best attributes that I believe that he gave us is grace and compassion. Because think about this. You've watched like the Olympics or some kind of, maybe a tennis match or some kind of sports thing, right? You might not even be into sports or whatever that particular thing is. And, track and field, or like I said, the Olympics, and you see somebody and maybe they fell, they're running, they're doing the, what do you call it? Whatever, the meter run or whatever. And they fell. This is the biggest race of their life. And they fell. There was actually more to the point. There was a race and I don't remember who it was, but the runner fell and his father got out of the bleachers, went down there on that track. This was a few years ago. You have to look it up. And he got down there on that track and he ran around that track with his son. There wasn't a dry eye in the stadium. There was everybody that watched it, went all over social media because this man was helping his son. Nobody knew. I mean, I didn't know them. You don't know them. The people that were crying didn't know them, but it touched something so deep in us. And I always believe that when you feel like that, it's that compassion that God gave you. It's that grace, it's that mercy that God gave you. But it's also an indication that you're capable of achieving something that's extraordinary too. That's why it affects you in such an emotional way. If that makes sense to you, right? Derek Redmond, is that his name? Awesome. Thank you, Aaron, for putting that in there. So That's the scenic route of answering that question. Let me see. What is this one here? Oh, hold on. I'm trying to get to it. When you said forgiving and not being okay with what happened to you and blaming yourself, I went through therapy as a child, but I still have self-blame. How do you forgive? Listen, for a long time, I held on to the blame. I held on to it. I thought it was my fault. And when this started happening to me, I was 7 years old, and it stopped when I was about 13. And I blamed myself. I conjured up these images as to why it was my fault. Why maybe I shouldn't have said this. Maybe I shouldn't have said, maybe I did, right? And what I realized, going back to what I was saying, what things could I control in that situation and what things could I not control in that situation? There was very little that I could control in that situation. It was very little that I could control in that situation. Actually, in that situation, there was nothing I could do to control. I had no control over that situation. And when I realized that I really had no control over it, therefore, I wasn't at fault. I wasn't to blame. I had no control. It's sometimes when we carry around that guilt, and when we carry around that blaming ourselves, it's because we haven't really analyzed the situation for what it really is. We still think we had some kind of control. That's the only reason why we can blame ourselves, because we feel like we had some kind of control when we really didn't. And once I understood that, it was like, okay, I really had no control over this situation. You know, I remember being mad at God. How'd you let this happen? Right? Again, that was blaming. Because what I had to realize, okay, this happened to me. And it made me more acutely aware of certain things that I know I would not have been aware of had that not happened to me when it came to my own kids. I would have raised my kids the same way that I was raised for the most part, if that hadn't happened to me. And there were things that happened in my childhood, aside from that abuse, that I should have never been exposed to. So I actually got to learn from that situation. I learned the consequences of what can happen when you're not mindful of your kids, right? So it sucked in a way that I had to go through that. But look what came as a result of that, because I've told that story of abuse lots of different times. I've never really gone into it this deep like I am with you guys. But if I hadn't gone through that, I would have never been able to share that with somebody. I remember after going through the divorce and whatnot, and I never wanted to talk about it from stage other than to say that, I'm divorced, right? I never wanted to talk about it. I felt like, oh, there's no reason to talk about it. I just tell them I'm divorced. That's enough, right? And it's one particular day, I was in Indianapolis, I believe. And I was on stage and I was, training. I'm training about network marketing. I'm not talking about anything personal, right? And that story found its way into my training. Hey, Indianapolis, I see you. It made its way into my training. And Donovan, I could not stop talking about it. I went into the details, not of what happened, but my process. I just went through my process. And when I got off stage, and literally while I was on stage, I'm hearing this voice go, no, don't, that's too much. You don't need to tell that part. But my mouth was like, right? And so I couldn't stop it. So then what happened was, when I got off stage, it was this older man. He was probably, I don't know, maybe late 40s or early 50s. And he came to me and he was crying, face red, crying. And I'm like, oh my God, are you okay? And he literally said to me, he said, this is the reason why I came today. He said, I didn't even want to come to this training today. He said, what you described is exactly what I'm going through with my wife. I don't want her to leave. And she's gone. She refuses to talk to me. She's adamant. I mean, he was literally telling me what he was going through. And he said, I did not want to come today, but I was trying to find something to take my mind off of what I'm going through. And I told him, I said, I had no intentions of telling that story today. So you coming today and me telling you that story was just for you. And in that room, there were probably about 800 people in that room, but that story was just for him. And on that day was when I learned and realized that everything that we go through and our lessons that we go through, God is always going to put somebody in your path that you got to teach that lesson to. Every single time, every time. And I started telling it at different places and it never failed. It was always one or two people, if not more, that would come up and say, I'm going through the same thing. Thank you for helping me go through it. Now I see I can actually get through it. So you never know why we go through things at the time when it's happening, but trust and believe, to the person that put that in the chat, your story is going to impact somebody else. Your story is literally going to empower somebody else as you work through the process. Forgive yourself and forgive them. Don't hold on to that blame. Don't hold on to that blame because it's not yours to hold on to. When you said forgive me, yeah, it's not yours to hold on to. Now, here's the thing. How do you forgive yourself when you don't think about it anymore? Let me see if I'm getting that right. I went through therapy as a child. Oh, I'm missing it. But how do you forgive yourself when you don't think about it anymore? You can still, you don't have to think about it. In order to forgive yourself, it doesn't mean that it has to be on your mind 24/7. There were years when I didn't think about what had happened to me as a kid. There were years, but I knew I was still holding it because of how I was dealing with different situations, how things would trigger me, how I felt out of control. When I would feel out of control and I would try to control situations, and I had to examine, I was like, why am I that person that always wants to control everything? Because I felt so out of control as a kid. I felt like I had no control as a kid, is what I mean. And so I just had to learn and unpack that and learn and unpack it. So even though you're not thinking about it every day, but you're still having a hard time forgiving yourself, that's what you've got to work on, is learn to forgive yourself. And you don't have to carry it with you every day in order to do that. And I would definitely say, get somebody to talk to. You maybe that therapist that you had then wasn't the right person for you, and it's okay. It's really okay. I want to make sure I cover all the question. Was it just big deal when you can say that you're grateful? Yes, trials and tribulations. It's amazing. You're so welcome. You guys are so welcome. I appreciate the love in the chat. What somebody say about my sons? Hold on. I saw it's going too fast. I can't see it. I mean, all right now. I heard you about my babies. No, just playing. Let me looking at my sons. You can forgive them from afar. Yes, you don't have to talk to them. You don't have to see them. You don't have to do anything like that, because even, you know, a person can actually say, I forgive you. They can be right in front of you. Have you ever had somebody apologize to you and it didn't feel genuine? They're right there in your face and it didn't feel genuine. So you don't have to be right there in order to do it. You can forgive and release them without ever saying a word to them, because the forgiveness is for you. When you forgive somebody else, that forgiveness is for you. When you forgive yourself, that's for you too. So don't feel like you got to hunt that person down. And sometimes people don't want to forgive because they think they've got to do it to that person face to face. You absolutely do not, especially if it's a situation like that. You guys are so welcome. The blame is not yours. I'm proud of you. Tonight was in part. Yes, absolutely, Tyler. Thank you, Francis, for that. Everything you're saying is exactly what I go through. My wife is helping a lot through my trauma. You got a bad chick there if she's helping you through that, because that's important. You got somebody that really loves you, because sometimes people can't handle other people's trauma. And the fact that she's helping you and she's there by your side, I love that. I love that. Keep growing, keep developing, keep, looking within. Get rid of the blame, write things down. Writing is so cathartic. Just write it down, like everything that happened to you, every single thing that happened, write it down in the ugly details. Write it down and then burn it. Write it down, every bit of it, what happened, how you feel about it, how it affected you, any other relationships that, maybe were a problem because of this situation. Write it all down on paper, all of it, and then burn it. And that can help start the process, because you got to reprogram your mind to see it for what it is and not see it for what you think it is, because you've been holding it all this time. So you got to reprogram your mind to see it in a whole different light. And when you're watching that paper burn, it's going to do something to you mentally, because you're literally watching it burn. And you're, like I said before, you're reprogramming your mind, where your mind is seeing you let it go. So hopefully that helps. I appreciate you guys so much. How did you control the trigger? How did I control the trigger? That was simpler with the abuse. It was more difficult when it came to my ex-husband. It took me a long time to several years to control the trigger, because, he could do and say certain things that would, because sometimes people know how to push your buttons. Let's just be real, right? And he was real good at that. And I was real good at letting him be real good at that. And so I caught myself one day, we were in an argument. We were in a real bad argument, and we weren't married. I'm like, and it was like I had an out of body experience. I'm like, why am I arguing with this fool? I'm not even married to him anymore. Why am I doing this? And so I literally started thinking, okay, what is it that he's saying and doing that's triggering me? And once I unpacked that, it was like, oh, he said such and such and such. And that made me go in here, and it made me feel some type of way that took me way back, several years back when we were married. It was like, it just took me right back into those feelings. And I was like, okay, so that situation that happened back then, I still haven't handled. I still haven't dealt with. So I had to deal with it. And that's where I pick up the paper. Okay, when he did this, or when this happened, this is how I felt. Why did I feel like that? I felt embarrassed. I felt, everybody was going to look at me. I felt that I wasn't living up to par. I felt this, I felt that. So when it was something that he said some years later, that took me all the way back there. So even though I was arguing with him in face to face, I was really arguing about something that happened 6 or 7 years earlier. And that's when I caught myself, like I said, and I was like, oh, okay, you won't get that one again. You won't get that lucky again. And I actually had to talk to him about that, and I didn't talk to him on that particular day because it wasn't going, we were butting heads like this. But I actually sat down with him and I said, we trigger each other because we haven't dealt with some things that happened in that marriage. And either we're going to have to deal with them and release it, or we can release it without dealing with it, without talking about it. I'm good either way. What do you want to do? And so, and that's really how we dealt with it, So now I just know, like I said earlier, even though I said it like in a joking way, I know that I can literally be around him just for about a couple of hours or so, 2 or 3 hours, and I'm good. I'm good. And that's how, you have to, really realize, if you've got people in your life that you maybe you have to be around, and you've got that kind of history with them, it's okay to remove yourself from that situation if it's not a healthy situation for you. It's perfectly fine, even if it's family, She said he was so good at doing it, and I was good at letting him do it. That one right there. Oh, yeah. 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 I was real good at just letting him push those buttons because I hadn't dealt with it. I hadn't dealt with it. So I really appreciate the questions and the comments. You said he is the only person that triggers me. Yep. That's what you want to handle right there. You want to find out why he triggers you. Not only who it is, but why. Is it something that he's saying? Is it something that he's doing? And what is the trigger? Maybe it's something that happened way back in your childhood. Maybe you feel a certain way when this person does that, and that's what the trigger is. It might not even have anything to do with that person. Maybe it does, and maybe it doesn't. But it might be something else that you need to deal with that goes much deeper than what that person is. And they're just the person in front of you. kind of the scapegoat, so to speak, unless it is that person in particular. But that the beauty is that you recognize that that person does something or says something to trigger you. That's gold right there. Most people don't even realize. They walk around like how I did for years, not realizing that these, trigger is such a trendy word now, but not realizing that this is why I am the way that I am, because I haven't dealt with these traumas. I haven't dealt with these things. I haven't forgiven myself. I haven't forgiven these people. And once I did that, like I said earlier, everything changed. Everything changed. My businesses started growing. It started making sense. And even when things didn't go the way that they wanted to, I didn't take it personal. I looked at, okay, what do I need to do? How do I need to analyze this? And I owned up for my part in it without feeling guilty. Without feeling guilty. So y'all gonna have me on here talking all night. Y'all are awesome. But just want to make sure I'm getting all the questions. Awesome, guys. I appreciate you so much. I really do. I really do have to do this call at 3:45. You know how you agree to a call? Yeah, I'll do an international call. No problem. What time is it again? Oh, 3:45 a.m. Okay. No problem. But I'm excited. That's for a college over there. So I'm excited about that. But again, thank you guys so much for your time. Joey, thank you for inviting me to speak to your team. I really, really appreciate it. Thank you guys for indulging me and letting me take that extra time to answer any questions that you have. I'm very appreciative of that, because you didn't have to do that. And I'm very appreciative of that. So with that being said, you all listen, this is our time. Y'all know this is our time. Let go of all that stuff. Let go of it. Because in the grand scheme of things, none of those things really matter. It just robs you of precious time. It robs you of the joy that you deserve. It robs you of the joy that you can bring to other people. It's just robbing you. It's a thief. It's just a thief, and we have such an amazing opportunity on our hands with this incredible company. With everything that we have in front of us, with going to Orlando, being able to walk that stage, being an inspiration so that you can share your story. Because when you get off that stage, people are going to be asking you all kinds of questions, and you get to share your story with them. Your story can inspire somebody that came to Orlando maybe on their last dime, but maybe they're coming to Orlando, just like how that man came to Indianapolis. Maybe they're coming to Orlando just to hear your story, and they don't even know it yet. So let's create more stories. Let's create more success, not only outwardly, but inwardly as well, so that we're whole people. We need to be whole people. Okay. So I love you guys. Thank you so much. Y'all have a great night. Thank you, Joey. He's probably taking care of the baby. Bye, you guys.